Our cover story is next, clearing the skies on September 11, when we come back.
Cobra's in the south.
We have a no shit hijack. This is real world.
On the morning of September 11, 2001, President Bush was in Florida. At his daily intelligence briefing, military chiefs considered the level of threat low. The whole of the US mainland was defended by only 14 planes, and not all of them were armed. News of the first attack in New York reached the president while he was on his way to visit a Florida school. It plunged America's leadership and defenses into chaos. George W. Bush began a terrifying airborne odyssey no other president has ever experienced. Air Force pilots were ordered to shoot suspect airliners out of the sky or crash their fighters into them in heroic suicide. For hours, the country was run from a blast-proof bunker deep inside a mountain. Our cover story reveals the dramatic events behind the scenes on that fateful day. Clear the Skies is reported by the BBC's Gavin Hewitt.
We could see at a distance the president with the Secret Service and so forth jogging.
Hey, just warming up. Come on, Stretch. Come on. Come on, Stretch.
Everything about it was ordinary, extremely ordinary. The president had a good jog. The plan for the day was going to be education. He was going to go to a classroom. And then we were heading back to Washington. Obviously, it didn't all end that way.
At this remote military outpost known as Huntress Control, they are as usual scanning the skies, looking for signs of attack from the air.
Cobra's in the south. Cobra's in the north red.
It so happens that on this morning, they're conducting a major war game called Vigilant Guardian when they receive a call.
They said, hey, we have a hijack, a possible hijack. One of our airlines might be hijacked. But since we were in the middle of an exercise, he didn't say real world or exercise. So I had to ask him, is this real world or is this exercise? And he said, no, it's real. We have a no shit hijack. This is real world.
I'll call First Air Force, let them know we've got a potential incident. The words came up that we had a possible hijack. I directed the staff to drive Otis to battle stations.
Well, I was just standing out by the ops desk, and I was told I had a phone call. I asked who it was, and they said it was a tower calling, and something about a hijacking. It was American Flight 11, 767 out of Boston, going to California. At the time, we ran in and got suited up.
The two pilots, known as Duff and Nasty, scramble. They are two of only 4 fighter pilots on alert, covering the northeastern United States. For years, the threat of attack from the air had been considered so small that on this day, the United States mainland is being defended by just 14 planes, dispersed at 7 bases.
We went out, we hopped in the jets, and we were ready to go, stand by for a scramble order if we were going to get one.
Neither pilot at this time has any reason to believe that this is other than a routine exercise.
And it's just peacetime. We're not thinking anything real bad is going to happen out of this. It's a suspected hijacking still. There's nothing confirmed.
Okay, battle stations is attained.
American Airlines Flight 11 crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center.
Looks like we got a possible hijacking. We plan on scrambling the jets out of Otis down to military airspace south of New York. Gets the approval. Scramble Otis.
The two F-15 pilots are 153 miles from New York. As they take off, they are unaware that one plane has already hit the World Trade Center.
33, left out's approved. Reported. 33.
We took off, started climbing, and started hitting on 280 heading. Basically towards New York City. I was trying to go fast to get there quickly. I was supersonic.
The president's motorcade is nearing the school in Florida. One of his aides traveling with him takes a call reporting an accident in New York and asks to be kept informed. A second plane, United Flight 175, hits the south tower of the World Trade Center.
So I called for bogey dope again, and it was right about then where they said the second aircraft has just hit the World Trade Center, which was obviously a shock to both Nasty and I, because we thought there was only one aircraft out there. We were probably 70 miles or so out when the second one hit, so we were just a matter of minutes away.
For a long time, wondered what would have happened if we'd been scrambled in time.
We've been over the flight, 1,000 times in our minds, and I don't know what we could have done to get there any quicker.
Yes, can. Get ready. May. Yes, May. Give yourselves a pat on the back.
Yeah.
There were about 5 of us standing at the back of this second grade classroom. Little kids there running through their reading drills with their teacher. It seemed like the most innocent, most normal, most kind of ordinary place in the world. But I did a double take when the president's chief of staff came in, leaned over, and whispered into the president's ear. Now that's remarkable. Nobody ever interrupts the president, even when he's in front of a group of 6-year-olds. It just isn't done.
60 on page 153. At the count of 3, everyone should be on page 153. If the yellow paper is on.
His face just went blank, as if, oh my God. When the chief of staff whispers into your ear, Mr. President, a second aircraft has just hit the World Trade Center. America's under attack. I mean, I can't imagine what was going through his mind.
We were to proceed directly to Manhattan instead of a combat air patrol. It was like you're in the middle of a bad B movie. Flying over Central Park, chasing down airplanes and watching the towers burning and flying by the Statue of Liberty. It was a very surreal kind of experience. It shouldn't have been happening. You know what's going on, but it's very hard to comprehend even though you're in the middle of it.
At the school, President Bush uses a secure phone to call the vice president. He turns often to look at a TV screen and declares, "We're at war," unaware a third hijacked plane is airborne.
The scramble horn goes off and we get the yellow light, which is our battle stations. So at that point, I go running out to the airplane, to my assigned alert airplane, get suited up and up in the cockpit ready to start.
Dean Ekman and Craig Borgstrom are the 2 remaining pilots on alert in the Northeast. Controllers are aware of other hijacked planes. These pilots are told to fly to Washington to protect the capital, but their base is almost 200 miles away.
They go active air scramble, vector 010 max speed. And then I push us over to the tower frequency and get our departure clearance, and they launch us out right away.
Ready to go? Start 2. Start 2.
Even while last-minute pre-launch checks are being made, the controllers learn that a third plane, American Airlines Flight 77 out of Washington, may have been hijacked.
We had a pretty quick response time. I believe it was 4 to 5 minutes we were airborne from that point.
The pilots get a signal over the plane's transponder, a code indicating an emergency wartime situation. President Bush decides to make his first comments.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. And I've ordered that the full resources of the federal government conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
A Secret Service agent ran out from the school and said, we're under terrorist attack, we have to go now. The run itself was extremely fast. Normally we run 40 to 50 miles an hour. On the way to the airport that day from the school, we were running 70 to 80. The Secret Service agents all had weapon barrels that were visible. They were pointing up at the ready position in case they needed to be used. And I thought that they were actually anticipating a terrorist attack on the president while we were en route.
On the radar screens, an air traffic controller spots an unidentified blip. It's a plane with its transponder turned off, and it's heading straight for Washington, D.C. It's flying low at 500 miles an hour. Air traffic control immediately warns the Secret Service. Here at the White House, Secret Service agents rushed into the Vice President's office. Sir, they said, we have to leave immediately. Before he could respond, they grabbed him under the arms, practically lifting the Vice President off the ground. They took him to the White House basement, along a tunnel, and to an underground bunker. Vice President Dick Cheney, now secure, takes charge. Having spoken to the president, he orders the military to take action against any hijacked planes approaching Washington.
Once we finally received that authority then to be able to kill, that was the first step to be able to do something about it. Yet it also gives you a real strong sense of responsibility that we're basically at war.
They said all airplanes, if you come within, I believe it was 30 miles of Washington, D.C., you will be shot down.
Also in the bunker, Norman Mineta. He was talking to the Federal Aviation Administration as a suspect plane approached the Capitol.
Someone came in and said to the Vice President, there's a plane out about 50 miles out. The same person said to the Vice President, Mr. Vice President, there's a plane 30 miles out. The young man said, Mr. Vice President, the plane's 10 miles out. Do the orders still stand? And the Vice President sort of whipped his head around and said, of course they do.
Some fears turned out to be unfounded, but one threat quickly became real.
114, it was an American Airlines plane headed east down over the pike, possibly toward the Pentagon.
I heard the roar of the engine. I rolled down the window and I looked up. I saw the jet banking, and clearly you could see the AA on the side. I knew it was an American Airlines jet. And it went into a steep decline and accelerated. Boom, right into the Pentagon, the side of the Pentagon. And the wings on the jet just folded back, and it just kind of crumpled. It kind of came together like an accordion, and it just pierced the wall of the Pentagon, and there was this huge explosion.
352. I think we just had an airplane crash east of here. Must be in the district area.
So then someone came in and said, Mr. Vice President, there's been an explosion at the Pentagon.
American Flight 77 hits the Pentagon with 64 people on board. The fighter jets from Langley Air Force Base had been 105 miles away at the moment of impact. That's 12 minutes flying time. Now, though, the pilots can see the smoke rising from America's military headquarters.
My wingman came on our inter-flight radio and said they want to know if, to confirm if the Pentagon's on fire. I said, yeah, affirmative, the Pentagon is burning.
I see this roll of blue-black smoke coming across the mall from left to right.
And I felt we should evacuate the Capitol immediately.
I went to my staff, I said, that smoke's not supposed to be there, what happened? And just moments later they came back and said, well, there was a third plane that's gone into the Pentagon.
I tried to call the speaker and all the phone lines were obviously very jammed by that time. So I just ran down to his office, which is 2 floors down. Got in to see him just as the plane had hit the Pentagon, and he was standing there looking at the smoke from the Pentagon.
So I'm thinking 2 planes in the World Trade Tower, a plane into the Pentagon. Here we're sitting in this beautiful building on a hill, which is really the epitome of freedom and liberty and democracy and a symbol around the world. We got to be a target if there are more planes out there.
I said, bring down all the planes, have them get on the ground as soon as possible. Now, at that point, we had something like 4,836 airplanes in the air.
All flight controllers are told to go to condition Air Traffic Control 0. It means clearing the skies of all private and commercial planes, something never attempted before.
Of course, when America is under attack, when you have no idea how many planes have been hijacked, the right thing to do is to clear the skies.
It's just an immediate kind of reaction to bring the planes down, because at that point also, we probably had maybe about 10 unaccounted for airplanes.
Here's the captain. I would like to order to remain seated. We have one aboard and we are going to back to the airport and we have our demand, so please remain quiet.
Controllers intercept an alarming message from United Flight 93 bound for California. It appears to be turning back east, possibly towards the capital, and it is not responding.
United 93, understand, have a bomb on board, go ahead. United 93, Cleveland, do you still hear the center? United 93, do you still hear Cleveland?
I've determined, of course, that with only 4 aircraft, we cannot defend the whole northeastern United States.
That message caused panic in Washington, as we'll see when our cover story continues in a moment.
And that day, I thought we were going to lose the capital of the United States to a terrorist attack.
People begin running from the Capitol building.
I can't take this, I'm going home.
Word is spreading that there is a 4th hijacked plane 20 minutes out and approaching fast.
Part of my core responsibility is to protect that dome and all the people who are in that building. And that day, I thought the plane was going to fly into that building. I knew there was nothing we could do about it. And that day, I thought we were going to lose the capital of the United States to a terrorist attack.
2 jets are diverted from a training mission in a desperate attempt to head off United Flight 93. These planes, like others called on that day, have not even been armed.
Now, some of them would have just gotten in the air, possibly without any armament on board. And those would be the ones that if you have to stop an aircraft, sometimes the only way to stop an aircraft is with your own aircraft if you don't have any weapons.
We had a sympathetic detonation, apparently one of the fuel tanks in the plane that hit the Pentagon, and you could feel a concussion on your body.
Buildings self-evacuated.
And after that point, it was just sort of mayhem.
It was very much a panic, and it wasn't controlled chaos. It was chaos.
Find out who is missing from their office or if everyone's accounted for. Okay, so if you could please cooperate.
You'd spot people's shoes, that people were so frantically trying to get out of the buildings, they actually ran out of their shoes and left their shoes behind. Women were kicking off their high heels so that they could run out of the buildings.
As close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI.
After a little while, we were told that we would intercept and shoot down the next hijack track.
New York controller did come over the radio and say, if we have another hijacked aircraft, you're going to have to shoot it down.
You just kind of change gears from the peacetime mentality to more of a combat mentality.
It's gone! The whole tower! It's gone! Holy crap!
From where we were sitting, you could see there were people dying, and it had to stop. So if that's what it was going to take, that was our job. We would have done it.
We raced to where Air Force One was prepped and ready to go. The president was hustled quickly on board Air Force One. No waving goodbye, no shaking hands. On board and the doors sealed. And the Secret Service agents standing with the 13 of us from the press who get on the rear stairs were yelling, "Move it, move it, move it." But the bomb squad from the Army was insisting that we open up every computer, every notebook, every bag we had with us so they could check us for explosives. Under that kind of push-rush yelling, we scrambled on board the aircraft and took off very, very quickly.
Never seen a plane take off like that. From where we were standing and looking back on it, the angle was almost, for where we were looking, it looked like it was going almost straight up.
That takeoff was historic. You know, this plane, these types of planes are not, they don't do this every day. And this vertical takeoff straight to 40,000 feet was, you know, really a very dramatic takeoff.
And for the first time that day, I felt a chill of foreboding. We were alone on an aircraft, the skies were empty, the terrorist threat was still undefined to us. We knew very little. The TV signal that we could see in the front of our cabin on the screen was very weak. It showed smoke coming from the Pentagon. It had more questions than it had answers. I've always known there's a doomsday scenario of how to evacuate and keep a president safe, to maintain the American government's chain of command in the worst nuclear disaster. I never thought I would be sitting on that military aircraft, watching that plan go into effect. It was a chilling feeling.
There was, you know, a lot of discussion as to where the president should go. They wanted to keep him moving, and moving targets obviously harder to hit.
Tracking Air Force One with the president on board is the responsibility of a command post inside Cheyenne Mountain. This is the nerve center of North America's air defense. Dug into the granite are 15 two-story buildings mounted on springs, designed to continue to operate in the event of a nuclear attack.
We were receiving calls from FAA now that were saying, hey, this may be a possible hijack, or this aircraft may be a possible hijack.
We got an emergency there in JFK. It's double fuel.
It's a fair shot.
We did not know how many more there were. Were there 5, 6, 7, or 8?
Eventually, we had the President, the Vice President, and the Secretary of Defense of the United States on the line.
When the Vice President called, he said that our primary responsibility this time, because at the time we didn't know how many more there were, was we had to protect the civilian government infrastructure there in Washington, D.C.
A man comes on and identifies himself as being with the Secret Service, and he says, "We need to protect the house." And flying over Washington, D.C., you look down and see the Pentagon burning. You know, now it's like, yeah, we need to protect the White House. Something's tragically gone wrong here, and you know, the Secret Service is asking for our help, and of course we're going to give it to them.
The authorities that we were given finally were to consider airliners that had been hijacked in this form as being hostile aircraft. The words that I remember coming over the phone over our secure lines were basically, "We will take lives in the air to preserve lives on the ground," which of course meant that we knew that these were airliners, that there were many innocent civilians on board, but that we couldn't afford to allow those to hit major population centers again on the ground as they had done at the World Trade Center.
The fourth plane, United Flight 93, crashes into the ground in Pennsylvania. For a time, the president didn't know whether fighter planes had shot it down. Only later does the story emerge that passengers had fought with the hijackers. Had it proceeded to Washington, Flight 93 would have been intercepted.
At the time that it crashed in the hills of Pennsylvania, it was about 93 miles from the F-16s, 93 to 96 miles from the F-16s that were over top of Washington, D.C. If he had continued on, we would have directed the fighters out to intercept him, to attempt to divert him, and then if he would not have diverted from a path going directly towards Washington, D.C., then ultimately we could have directed them to engage or shoot down that aircraft.
At 10:05, alarm sounded, a steady electronic beep followed by a recorded male voice saying, "Evacuate the White House." Doors burst open, with scores of staffers moving out, with Secret Service agents telling them to move faster and faster.
Everybody out! I'm on the north line.
Evacuate the White House. Evacuate the White House.
Everybody out!
Evacuate the
Everybody
White
out!
House. Evacuate the White House. The White House.
Across the road from the White House in Lafayette Park, police and Secret Service agents run into the streets with automatic weapons. The capital becomes a city of panic and rumors. It is believed wrongly that a bomb has exploded at the State Department. All government buildings begin to evacuate.
Everybody start heading that way! Let's go this way, all the way out to I Street. You know it's locked down. Let's go!
On just Navy base, put under an increased security condition called threat controlling.
Tell them to come to me as soon as you can, because we may have to move. Oh, it collapsed right now. As you can see, I assume you're taking our picture. I do not have a monitor, but right now we just had a middle section here of the E-ring of the Pentagon collapse from the amount of fire and destruction from this. So obviously there was a great deal of damage here. It just collapsed.
Those inside Cheyenne Mountain now take an unprecedented step to defend their command center.
The blast doors were closed that morning for the first time in anger since this place was opened for operations in 1966. We'd received intelligence that there might be another airliner airborne from a city in the United States whose target was specifically Cheyenne Mountain. So we did what we call buttoning up the mountain. We closed the blast doors, and everybody that was in the mountain was going to stay for a while.
We were receiving all kinds of inputs from everybody. I mean, we received an input that there was a yellow transport truck coming up the hill with 7 Islamic folks in the front cab.
Once I realized that we had those blast doors closed, I think they could have launched airliners at this mountain all day. And we never would have felt the effects of it because we have 2,600 feet of granite above us. We have 2 25-ton blast doors protecting us.
Nasty and I were both over right by the North Tower. I was over the top looking down at it, and right at that moment it just started falling away from me. And I couldn't really comprehend what was happening. It wasn't until I saw some of the plume coming out from the bottom of the building that I realized that it was imploding upon itself. And at that point, that's the sickest feeling I've ever had in an airplane.
My father worked in a skyscraper in Chicago when I was a kid, and I think about 18,000 people worked in the skyscraper. So when the towers came down, I thought at least 30,000 people were killed. Sorry, stop.
Watching that go on, it felt like we were at war, and it felt like we, at that point, like we were losing.
We were going to do whatever it took to keep that from happening again.
The commanders of America's nuclear strike force now decide to put their doomsday planes into the air. Our cover story continues after this.
What? The doomsday plane. Is that what that was? Hell yeah. What was that plane? The doomsday plane.
Good morning, sir. This update briefing is classified.
America's nuclear strike force is controlled from U.S. Strategic Command.
Thank you. Task Force 134.
That day, military commanders from their blast-proof bunker 60 feet underground are conducting a major exercise involving America's nuclear forces. They decide to cancel the exercise immediately, and like American forces worldwide, are now put on DEFCON 3.
So what are they going to provide you then?
This is the highest state of alert since the 1973 Arab-Israeli War.
This command has practiced for 50-plus years for the unthinkable. We did not know how big it was going to be. With the airplanes, we had to worry about other types of activities such as chemical or biological attacks. So we war gamed those to see where would they occur, how would they occur, and what would our response be.
Doomsday plane. Is that what that was? Hell yeah. What was that plane? The doomsday plane. The commanders.
You guys, please, all the way to A Street, please.
Melissa?
Secret Service agents take to the roof of the White House looking for more planes. During the day, 21 aircraft are identified as possible hijacks.
We don't normally do this. We'd like you to go.
That morning, it's decided to execute a secret plan to ensure the survival of the American government and its leadership.
In order to ensure continuity of government, we evacuated the leadership completely out of the city of Washington to a secure location. And we sent agents also out with them in the aircraft so that when they arrived at the secure location on the other end, that we'd have people with them also.
I then flew out to an undisclosed location, and I remember being in that helicopter and flying across the southern tip of Washington, looking down. There's nobody on the streets, no cars moving on the streets. Went across the Potomac River and looked down. Never dreamed that if I would ever be Speaker of the House, but if I would, we'd be doing something like this.
For the first time, the president activates a top-secret plan, originally designed as an insurance policy against Armageddon. Its purpose is to ensure the line of succession to the presidency and protect America's political leadership, come what may. Top congressional leaders and cabinet members are now removed to secret locations housed underground. For those in direct line to succeed the president, the prospect that they could be running the country by the end of the day no longer seems the stuff of dreams. Described as small cities built into granite, the secure locations are designed for long-term occupation. They are intended to provide every basic facility for the Senate and House leadership. This bunker is located under a hotel, the entrance disguised as a television repair shop. There are decontamination suites in the event of a nuclear attack. This place has been decommissioned, but there are thought to be 50 active sites throughout the country. The president, aboard Air Force One, is advised by the vice president that it is unwise to return to Washington while any civilian planes remain in the skies. George W. Bush now summons 2 congressmen who are on the plane with him. His television is showing pictures of the collapsed Twin Towers.
We were notified that the president wanted to speak with us. This was a huge event in American history. And here we are being briefed by the President of the United States.
At 11:31 a.m., Ari Fleischer said, off the record, President Bush is being evacuated. And I said, evacuated? You can't say that off the record. That is historic. I've covered the White House for more than 25 years. I have never heard of a president being evacuated. The president is being evacuated. Can't be off the record. It is a moment for history.
F-16s are launched to provide a fighter escort for the president's plane, which is now thought to be a target.
We have a real-world event in progress. All personnel report to their duty stations on our BCAR.
There was a substantial, incredible threat to Air Force One.
After the caller had rung in using the secret code word, some on board are told, "We could be next." Fighter pilots are instructed they can use deadly force to protect the president.
We were given, for the first time ever in alert history, we were given carte blanche to shoot anybody down who wasn't responding.
F-16 jet fighters appeared off the wings. In fact, I remember Ari Fleischer, the press secretary, running back to us and saying, look out here. How stunned he was.
I could not believe how close they were. They were so close that we could see the pilot's head as he flew right off the left wing of the plane. I was scared to death.
America's skies are cleared of over 4,000 commercial planes in less than 3 hours. The president is advised that there are still concerns about possible hijackings of international flights. He is warned not to return to Washington and heads for an airbase with an underground command center. the president is taken to a cinder block bunker 60 feet below the ground. Here he holds a video conference with 8 members of the National Security Council. Osama bin Laden has already been identified as the likely source of the attacks. There is still concern about 6 international flights, but while at the offered base, the threat is reduced to just 1 plane.
The last aircraft that we were concerned about was a flight from Madrid to JFK Airport in the United States. We had a conference call going with everyone in the world on this conference call. The White House was on this conference call. We were on this conference call. All of the military, the FBI, the CIA, every agency that you can imagine was there. The President and the Secretary of Defense were on this conference call as well. And the President desperately wanted to get back to Washington, D.C. We were able to determine that that aircraft was not being hijacked by calling the company. The company confirmed that that aircraft had turned around, had been flown back indeed to Madrid, had landed, and they had talked to the pilot. We found that out by calling the company direct. And so I just picked up the conference call and said, Mr. President, we have confirmation that aircraft is turned around, is on the ground, and we have no other aircraft in the system. And with that, he got in his aircraft and flew back to Washington, D.C.
All of a sudden, in the door appears the President of the United States.
He waved away our notebooks, waved at us to put them away.
He stood there talking, and he looked a bit, not down or depressed or anything, but just, dead-ass tired. I mean, he looked tired.
And we asked him, are you going to speak? He said, probably.
Just in conversation, I just said, sir, can't let this get you down, and he just said, listen, I'm not going to let any two-bit thugs bring the American people or me down.
But he then made it very clear we weren't to report that. That wasn't the language that he wanted to use to the American people or to the world.
The president finally returns to Washington. In a matter of hours, the country has been changed. America had been found unprepared for a new type of war. Innocents had been lost. An escort of 6 helicopters was waiting for him. 300 fighters were defending the skies. America would soon realize there was no immunity from the world's conflicts.
It was a traumatic day, of course, and I remember being glad to get back to Washington. And the chopper pilot flies by the Pentagon, and I saw one of the great symbols of our strength up in flames. And it reminded me that we're in a new war. It was a visual reminder about the struggles that laid ahead for our country, and it was an impressionable moment for me.
That report by Gavin Hewitt of the BBC.